Ron Paul has this great quote, and he said that money is the most sought after monopolistic power of man. And if you've been listening to this show for some time, you've probably come to that conclusion yourself. Money is certainly the most powerful material incentive in the world, and it seems to be something that touches almost every domain of human affairs. And because it has so much influence on human psychology, the shape of society, the ability to wield power, both physically and politically, which we'll get into, money is a source of great temptation for people. And on this point, Hernan Cortes in the 16th century, who was the governor of New Spain, has a great quote. He said, "I and my companions suffer from a disease of the heart, which can only be cured by gold." And so, the avarice and the greed that manifests in some people's hearts is easily or most easily satiated with money, which makes money one of the most pursued and sought after powers in the world. But you might be asking yourself, so why? Why so sought after? What is it about power? What is it what is the power of money, you might say? And I think we should start by just with the simple fact that we are an interdependent social animal, which means we need one another, the favors of one another, the skills and knowledge of one another to thrive, not only in the present moment across space with all of our living peers, but also across time, right? This is how we accumulate knowledge, and we, stand on the shoulders of the proverbial giants. This is something that is just a reality, right? It's like no one can do it on their own. You often hear these people talking about certain people as say a self-made man, and I just think that's a totally bogus perspective on anyone, right? Everyone was born to some parents that took care of them. Everyone was a child and had a lot of help along the way in coming to adulthood. And then even in adulthood, we all work inside of businesses. We all work with one another. We collaborate at scale to solve our biggest and most challenging problems. So I think the idea of anyone being independently and completely self-made in some isolated way is just a farce. And another way to look at money is that it's the tool that actually helped us scale our reciprocal altruism. And reciprocal altruism is something that Richard Dawkins, the evolutionary biologist, wrote about. This is a term he coined. And in his book in 1976 titled The Selfish Gene, Dawkins discussed reciprocal altruism as a strategy that can evolve under certain conditions, especially when individuals are likely to encounter each other repeatedly. So, it might be in my best interest to say, screw you over in the deal, right? If you deliver me the money and I'm supposed to deliver the goods, well, if you delivered the money first, well, maybe I should just abscond with the goods. But if I know that I'm gonna see you again, right, and we exist in a community together, and we're gonna have repeated interactions, then I'm much less likely to behave in that way. I'm much more likely to reciprocate the favors that you do for me. And so this idea of reciprocal altruism is really the concept of you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours. And eventually this strategy can become evolutionarily stable because it actually enhances survival and reproductive success for those individuals that reciprocate with one another over time. Again, we are very collaborative species. To use the economics term, we benefit from the division of labor when we collaborate and specialize economically, such that I can do what I'm best at, you can do what you're best at, and then we can both trade and both enjoy the specialized fruits of one another's labor, right? We can do that at scale, and it is that game dynamic that's really premised on the rule set of private property that allows us to increase our knowledge and our standards of living over time. It's how we got into the modern age where we enjoy all these technological luxuries like we do today. And so, reciprocal altruism, it's something that occurs with most social animals, actually. A wolf that brings down an animal will share it with the pack, right? He doesn't try to eat it all to himself. They do, the alpha wolf does kind of eat his fill before he shares the kill, but he shares nonetheless. And he knows that by sharing, that's a good strategy for, the future moose that they need to bring down that he may not be able to. Maybe one of the other wolves will bring it down instead. So by sharing, they actually increase the evolutionary fitness of the pack. And, humans basically are the same. We kind of take it to the next level with money, though, because we take this idea of reciprocal altruism, which can really only work within a small circle of trust, typically within the scope of, say, the Dunbar's number, which is roughly 150 people, which is basically the cognitive limit of how many people we can know by name and by face to interact with on a regular basis. We can know more people by name and by face, but like to have a circle of trust is typically quantified at around 150 people. But with money, we have this accounting system, right, by which we're actually accounting for the favors that have been rendered across time and that are due to be rendered in the future. So when it's functioning properly, money is something that makes reciprocal altruism mathematically precise. And this is very interesting because it kind of makes it impersonal at that point and makes it very, very precise, right? It's the accounting's not, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours later. It's no, like I gave you 37.2 scratches at this point in time and you owe me 37.2 in the future. It's something much more like that. And so if you think about it like this, every time you go to work, you produce something for someone else. That's what a job is, right? You receive money in return. You are paid salary, wage, whatever it may be. Therefore, in doing that, just that exchange right there, you have added to the productive output of the species, but you haven't subtracted from it yet, as long as you still hold that money, right? So later, you obviously have the option to take that money that you earned and trade it to someone else to receive a favor from them in exchange, right? You can go to the restaurant and buy food or go to the store and buy shoes or whatever it may be. And so it's this accounting system for favors, if you will, that is money, that allows human beings to scratch each other's backs without even needing to know or trust one another, right? That you can just, you can walk into a store with strangers and just give them money and they don't need to know that you're good for it, right? It's like they're trusting that the money has integrity rather than you having personal integrity. And this is really kind of the basis on which we build interactions with strangers, right? That really is the one of the main qualities of civilization. So Nick Szabo, who many of you guys have probably heard of, famous computer scientist and cryptographer, known for his work in digital currencies before Bitcoin. He's written extensively on the concept of trust minimization as it relates to money. And his basic argument is that money should be designed to minimize the need to trust in third parties, such, really anyone, right? To trust another person, to trust a bank, to trust a government, because those intermediaries introduce the risk of fraud, censorship, inefficiency, et cetera, right? You've introduced what's called counterparty risk, which is the risk that the counterpart to your transaction will break their promise. And so trust minimization means creating a system where participants do not need to rely on the integrity or reliability of other people to verify transactions or, store purchasing power across time. In other words, as this pertains to money, An ideal trust minimized money is one that minimizes the dependence on human promises, right? Something, ideally with like mathematical integrity or thermodynamic integrity, something that's rooted in physical laws that we can't easily change on a whim, right? And this is not to throw out promises as like a very important part of human interaction, right? Promises like, contracts. A contract is a formalized promise between two counterparties. General agreements, even implicit things like morality, right? These things are agreements too, even though they're more implicit rather than explicit. These are all necessary for humans to interact with one another in a productive way, but they're all ultimately promises that run the risk of being broken. And so again, that's why an ideal money would be minimally dependent on promises so that people could use this money to trade favors with one another without the fear, or with a minimal fear, let's say, of that money breaking, right? If the money is based on promises, then it's as breakable as a promise. But if the money is based on work, energy, mathematics, things like this, then those things are much more difficult to break, therefore imbuing the money with much higher integrity. So again, looking at money as this means by which we trade favors, since every favor requires the power of human labor to produce or to render, we could say something like money is the language of labor power. Okay, so let's break this definition down. Well, for starters, why are we saying that money is a language? Well, money is expressed in terms of mathematics, and mathematics, as Galileo said, is the language of the universe. In Galileo's 1623 book, The Assayer, he wrote the following, quote, "Philosophy is written in that great book which ever lies before our eyes. I mean the universe, but we cannot understand it if we do not first learn the language and grasp the symbols in which it is written. This book is written in the language of mathematics, and its characters are triangles, circles, and other geometric figures, without which it is humanly impossible to understand a single word of it. Without these, one is wandering around in a dark labyrinth," unquote. So mathematics, obviously a very fundamental language. It is something that is universal, right? It's cross-cultural. In the sphere of economic production, it is, we are using the same mathematics that are used in China and in India, et cetera. Like the world is standardized to this one common language. And in doing so, we not only have a vernacular that we can all speak, like a channel through which we can all communicate, but we also have something that very precisely maps the contours of reality, right? You could say, as Galileo said above, it's this very precise language. And it is a language in the sense too that it has evolved and changed over time, right? The mathematics of 500 years ago are much less sophisticated than the mathematics we use today. So as our understanding of the world changes, so too do the mathematics that we use. But as this relates to money, well, money is what expresses the products of human labor power in mathematical terms. So we're not just talking about the qualities of things when we express them in money, but rather we are translating them into the quantitative, it's not quite a measurement, it's more of an appraisal, a quantitative appraisal of the value of these things, which is the price, right? And then that price is something that allows all of us to communicate about the relevance of that asset in the big sphere of all these human wants, right? Everyone wants these problems solved. Well, there's only so much of things in the world available to solve those problems. And so through the bid-ask auction process of the market, you arrive at the price. And so it's a very potent form of data compression, right? You don't need to know why everyone wants this thing so much. You don't need to know how much of it is in existence. You just need to know that single number to act upon, right? If you're a producer and the price goes up, well, then you're incentivized to produce more. And on the other side of the market and the price goes up, you are incentivized as a consumer to consume less or use something else, basically. So price signals facilitated, which are mathematical, which are numbers, basically, that are facilitated and expressed through money are one of the most important communication devices in the world. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.